So I want to start with obesity because that's obviously where people are so focused right now. And the question of where we're at in terms of the competition right now, right? There's there's Novo, and these two entrenched drugs, and people want to know, like, is it possible for anything else to compete? So what's the bar? Where do you think other companies, other drugs need to meet in order to compete with you guys?
Yeah, well, I think probably the best way to answer like the where's the bar question is by talking about what we're doing next, because obviously our next generation molecules are designed to meet and surpass what we think is important innovation. Two different directions. So one is just around ease of use, I would say, and broad applicability. So here we're moving into the oral space, so a pill that's once a day with no food or water restrictions that can deliver efficacy similar to injectable GLP-1. So that drug for us is called orforglipron. It's in phase 3 clinical trials. We should have readouts later this year. I'm excited about it not because it's going to give more weight loss or better tolerability or anything like that, just because it's a pill and it's oral, and I think that can help a lot of people who may be reticent to use an injectable or may live in parts of the world where it's hard to have cold chain shipping, it's easier to make, et cetera. So that's one way, is ease of use. The other idea, of course, is more potent mechanisms. So tirzepatide was the first dual incretin, GLP and GIP, and of course, naturally now we've moved to a triple, which is retatrutide, which is GLP, GIP, and glucagon. That's also in phase 3. That's going to read out late this year. And we hope that will be a step change from tirzepatide on efficacy. Maybe for patients who can't achieve the level of weight loss they need on tirzepatide, this could be an alternative. I think also really important to think about are the other benefits that come along with weight loss. And those could be different for different drugs. And retatrutide, because it has glucagon, could have unique benefits that we don't see with drugs like tirzepatide. So I think those are the two avenues that we can think about: ease of use and stronger, more efficacious drugs.
And on the stronger, more efficacious drugs, I mean, what do you think you need to achieve to improve on what you have with tirzepatide?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer because the tirzepatide efficacy has been different in different trials. Probably, in the pivotal trial that led to FDA approval, it was almost 22% weight loss, but in subsequent trials, depending on who you enroll and how you run the trial, we've gotten 26, 27% weight loss, which is really a very high bar. For many people, that's enough. For some people, maybe they need more. I hope that the next generation drugs can, give a couple of percentage points, maybe 5 percentage points as a reasonable step change above tirzepatide. So depending on the clinical trial, that could be in the range of 25 to higher percent weight loss.
And do you think we'll ever get more than that? Do we need more than that? I think that's one of the debates right now. Like, how much is too much?
Not for most people, probably. There's surely a segment of the population with obesity that is going to need stronger medicines, and we want to have something for them. In terms of medical need, that's important. These are the people with the most serious disease. On the other hand, in terms of commercial opportunity or breadth of impact, it's going to get smaller and smaller. I actually think the kinds of weight loss we see with tirzepatide is probably the biggest number of people who can benefit. And then as you get more potent, it'll get smaller and smaller populations.
And then where do you see the orals fitting in?
The orals could be even larger if we can address the full unmet need population here. Around the world, we think close to 1 billion people in the coming years will be able to benefit from a medicine like this. Even in the United States, where the injectable weight loss drugs have done great and beginning to change health of the population, we estimate we're still in the single digits in terms of the percent of people who could benefit from these drugs that are using them. And so could we go 5 or 10x in terms of the number of people that benefit with an oral? Maybe we could. I look at drugs like statins or antihypertensives that have dramatically reduced the risk of heart disease in our population. if we can do the same with obesity, I think we'll see all these other benefits. Those drugs are used in about a third of the people who could benefit. So that's probably the next milestone for us in obesity.
Well, it's interesting though, because we're already seeing this sort of debate of, originally it was seen as orals would be this big breakthrough, and now people are thinking, is it just going to be for maintenance? People are fine with the injectables. Maybe people really don't care that much.
Yeah.
So is this really big of an opportunity?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we have to be humble about our ability to predict human behavior. I think we can predict the science pretty well, but what will patients want to take and what will doctors want to prescribe is harder to predict. I'm reasonably optimistic that orals will be preferred if they can offer the benefits, but we've been pleasantly surprised by people's willingness to try an injectable. And most people who try a drug like Zepbound or Mounjaro as a weekly injectable, they come to appreciate it. And when I talk to them, they say, "Oh, I'm not so sure I would switch to an oral. I like the ritual of a once weekly injection, and it's not painful for me." And so for those patients, maybe they'll stay. I think there's others who see an injectable as a more serious kind of medicine, and they say, "Well, now that I've lost my weight and I'm in maintenance, can I switch to something that's less strong or something that's a pill?" And so we're doing that trial to see if maintenance with a pill form it could be better or could be as good. And some patients may prefer that. I think the most important thing we can do as a company is just by recognizing the magnitude of the opportunity to help patients here, have different options and then let patients and doctors sort through those options. I don't have to get the predictions right about this will be 20% of the population, this will be 40% of the population, as long as I have something for each group.
Right, and with the beyond the just weight loss and some of the other health effects, I mean, where else do you think these drugs might be beneficial? Yeah,
this has probably been the most amazing thing I've seen in my lifetime as a scientist and a physician. Just the multitude of different diseases that could potentially benefit from drugs like Zepbound, Mounjaro, or next generation drugs, orforglipron and retatrutide. It's really eye-opening, and the way we're learning about this is mainly from patients telling us, "I've been on your drug and I've seen this benefit that was surprising. Are you going to research it?" And that sort of anecdotal evidence then has grown to retrospective real-world studies where we've looked at the incidence of different diseases based on patients who are on this medicine or not on it. And there's some important clues. We're really excited about pursuing indications in neuroscience, so addiction, for example, and mood disorders as well, where there's a lot of evidence that these drugs work in the brain and could help patients with those diseases. We're interested in inflammatory diseases, in diseases of the gastrointestinal tract. We already have indications for sleep apnea. We're working towards a heart disease. I can't think of another example in my career and medical history recently where there's been a medicine that has offered the potential for so many different health improvements. Sometimes I pause and think, why are we so lucky to have this? I think the answer is that food and eating and metabolism is so central to what it means to be a person or any animal, right? This is essential to how we evolved, that when you start to modulate that, it has an effect on everything else in your life. And so we're excited to see that. I think this will be the era of uncovering the different health benefits from incretins.
Well, that'll be really interesting to watch. And there's so much out there, like so many of these companies, trying to get in this space. And so I wonder, when you look out in the landscape, is there anything, that you wish you had, or anything that you are looking out as sort of the next frontier?
Yeah. Well, this is a business that. It forces you to stay humble, so we never underestimate what others could invent. Right now we have, I think, beyond tirzepatide, which is the approved drug, we have 11 other medicines in clinical trials that work on different mechanisms of obesity. So I can't point to anything that some company has that Lilly isn't working on or have something. But there are new frontiers that are maybe science fiction today that we want to make a reality. We want to make a once-a-year medicine, and then we want to make a once-a-lifetime medicine. So imagine if you can correct diseases like obesity and diabetes the way that we treat to prevent infectious disease with vaccines. So what if we could have a once-in-a-lifetime therapy? The problem actually with chronic disease isn't so much our inability to make better and better medicines, it's our inability to convince people to stay on them and take them. And even though we have great medicines for cholesterol and great medicines for blood pressure, a lot of that disease goes untreated because people don't like the side effects or don't stay on the drugs. So we want to change that. That's a future frontier, but I think it could be possible.
Is that some of the work out of your Lilly Genetic Medicines out in Boston?
Yeah. We've opened a new genetic medicine center in Boston, and we're looking at gene therapies for a variety of diseases, and maybe someday that could include obesity and diabetes. We also are looking at mechanisms in the brain that could reset your set point for body weight. We understand that everyone walks around with a certain set point, and when you're below your set point for body mass, you feel really hungry and you eat and try and conserve energy to get back to your set point. That's why it's so hard for people to lose weight and stay at a lower body weight through diet and exercise, because their set point is still up here and their brain is screaming at them, we need to eat, we need to eat, we need to eat. And that eventually becomes overwhelming. What if we could change that and turn that down? I think we're on a trajectory here where we can continue to study the science and improve the medicines for decades to come. I hope it will be Lilly that's the innovator, but if it's other companies and small biotechs, and we'll work with them.
Yeah, and how much do you look at, everything we know about diets and, weight loss? I think the one that always comes to mind is sort of that Biggest Loser study where people lost a ton of weight and then they still ended up gaining it back. So how much do you look at that, especially, now we're talking about people started at the beginning of the year, start your drug at the beginning of the year, and then they go off of it, and, is this just another diet?
It's definitely not another diet. But you're right that diet and exercise don't often have durable weight loss. For some people, they can. One of the most sort of profound proofs of this for me came in our phase 3 clinical trials for tirzepatide in the placebo group. So these are people who've been struggling with obesity, many of them for a long period of time, who are desperate for a treatment. They really want something to work. And we're giving them a placebo injection once a week. They're under the care of a doctor. And as part of this trial, they are given a low-calorie diet and an exercise regimen, and a doctor's checking in on them on a regular basis on how they're doing. It's sort of the optimal setup for weight loss. Motivated population, doctor's care, diet and exercise. And they lost a couple % of their body weight on average. And so a few of them maybe lost 5% and a couple a little more, but that's what you get with diet and exercise over a long period of time in a motivated population. It doesn't really give you very many patients who can lose 10, 15, 20, 25% of their body weight. So I know, as a doctor, I was educated, diet and exercise is the treatment for obesity. It's a good start. But for most people, they'll need something stronger to actually get to the weight loss that they need to achieve. In terms of people staying on the drug, though, that, of course, all drugs, people want to come off of it. They want to be healthy. As we accumulate more data about the long-term benefits, I think that could help. We hope to be able to show, for example, yet this year in type 2 diabetes and then in obesity, that this can reduce cardiovascular outcomes. And so then you can start to think about this as a drug that not only did it help me lose the weight, but now I can stay on it because I'm going to have long-term, healthier life. The reality is when people come off of it, the food noise starts to come back, the hunger comes back, and then they're back to this sort of diet and exercise, which for many people can't work. So right now we see it as a chronic therapy.